InfoWars DC Bureau Chief Dr. Jerome Corsi joins us now, and it's good to have you with us. I want to talk about the Freedom of Information Act request to investigate the Central Intelligence Agency. It's time for them to put up or shut up to see if the Russians were involved in the presidential election in favor of Donald Trump. Can you tell us more about that?
The FOIA request is coming from Judicial Watch.
That's right.
I've worked with Judicial Watch for a long time. Tom Fitton. It's a really credible and important group in Washington. They did a lot to break the issue on Hillary's server, and now Judicial Watch has filed FOIA requests to get the documents from inside the government, importantly from the Department of Justice and from others, in terms of all this supposed Russian involvement throwing the election for Donald Trump, which so far everyone has looked at it of any credibility. All the intelligence committees in Congress have said there's no evidence for.
No, they've got nothing. They've got nothing. But do I also understand there's also separate FOIA requests to investigate whether or not General Michael Flynn, for example, whether he was talking to the Russians. Is that true?
Yeah, see, they want, when Judicial Watch does this, they're going to want all the records they can find that pertain to anything of these Russian allegations interfering in the election. And I think what you're going to find is that this was a witch hunt that the Obama administration went on. I believe the original goal was to wiretap Trump. And they got the FISA request, which they made initially declined. They had to go a second time to get a FISA approval. And they began wiretapping, or probably electronic surveillance, more appropriately, on Russian agents. And they knew they would get some of the Trump people captured in that, and they would pass that information on to the Clinton campaign, because we have documents. Even Robbie Mook, who was the campaign manager for Clinton, this week on Fox and Friends, said that the campaign was getting information from wiretaps.
Now, is that illegal? Because I don't understand, because Hillary would not be president yet. And I could see if they're spying on the Russians to see if they're going to launch a cyber attack or whatever. I could see as far as national security how that would go. But I don't see, is there any proof that they deliberately targeted Donald Trump or any of his staff? Or was this just a matter of spying on the Russians and then lo and behold, oh, shock and surprise, Donald Trump's on the phone with the Russians? What is really going on?
Well, I think it's all big wink, wink. I mean, I think, first of all, the Department of Justice under Loretta Lynch knew they couldn't target Trump, because then you're targeting.
Oh, I get you. Okay.
So they target the Russians, knowing they're going to get Trump, and they pass that information on to Hillary's campaign, which is politically utilizing information from supposedly a FISA search on national security, which would be completely illegal. And I think the whole thing was done by Obama, who's been surveilling everyone.
Well, that's right.
James Rosen, the Fox reporter, journalist. Obama, I think, is going to turn out to have been more insane with electronic surveillance than even Richard Nixon. In Richard Nixon's day, of course, he didn't have the capabilities Barack Obama has. And when we get finished with this investigation, I think it's going to backfire on the Democrats, because I don't think there was any possibility the Russians ever colluded with Donald Trump to throw the election. It's nonsense. If Podesta's emails were detrimental, Podesta shouldn't have written what he wrote. What was detrimental was that the public finally got to see how corrupt the Democrats were. And that's the real fault here, that the Democrats are trying to cover up.
Well, look, it's a beautiful thing. What would we do without WikiLeaks, right? Although a lot of the surveillance, the surveillance grid and the surveillance society, we've been talking about this at InfoWars along with you yourself. We've been talking about that for a very, very long time. Now with this WikiLeaks release, we're being vindicated. But I want to get back to the FISA request, because former National Director of Intelligence, James Clapper, was on Meet the Press, and he said that if there was a FISA request, he would have definitely seen it, but it never came his way. Let's check out that clip.
The FBI, for instance, had a FISA court order of some sort for a surveillance. Would that be information you would know or not know?
Yes.
You would be told this?
I would know that.
If there was a FISA court order on something like this?
Something like this, absolutely.
And at this point, you can't confirm or deny whether that exists?
I can deny it.
There is no FISA court order.
Not to my knowledge.
Of anything at Trump Tower?
No.
So there you go. The former director of national security, James Clapper, just flat out denying it. Where did it come from if he didn't see it?
Well, so you got to understand that you listen to very precisely what Clapper said, and you got to parse these guys in the Obama administration. He said he didn't know of a FISA request on Trump or Trump Towers. That's not how they did it. They put the FISA request on the Russians and caught Trump. Now, if he'd asked him, was there a FISA request on surveillance of the Russians, Clapper would have had to say yes. So he was not lying, but he was, diverting the truth, let's say, by narrowly answering a question, saying he didn't have sex with that woman because the particular act involved was not, according to Bill Clinton, sex.
All right. So it was a setup. And, I have to laugh at the mainstream media. They're basically regurgitating the talking point that this is unsubstantiated claims. You've probably heard that over and over again by Donald Trump. But do you think he's got a case here? And do you think, because, there's going to be more WikiLeaks coming out. This is just the beginning, by the way, because Julian Assange announced that this Vault 7 information, for example, was just the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be more to follow. Any suspicion on what we could expect next?
Well, he said if Assange said he's only released 1% of this Vault 7.
Yeah, that's amazing, because that was a lot, too. That was a big 1%.
That's huge. That's 1%.
Yeah.
He's already taken up the entire intelligence agencies. There's obvious that that Trump was caught in the wiretaps because there were reports on this during the campaign. Hillary was out there saying it, and so was Mook. They were all talking about Trump colluding with the Russians, and they had to get that information from inside the Obama administration. It was reported in the New York Times and other papers. The New York Times just has amnesia when they're trying to develop a meme or a narrative that Trump doesn't know what he's talking about, because Trump is regurgitating what the New York Times reported during the campaign, namely that Hillary was told that Trump, was colluding with the Russians, and it wasn't the case. It wasn't true. Remember, it was Putin who was paying Hillary and Podesta, and we've documented that. I've documented it.
That's right. We sure have.
The administration the Trump campaign put out a memorandum about it during the campaign, and that's the real collusion. It was the Democrats who were in bed with Russia, and if Hillary had won, Putin would have been set up to blackmail her.
Well, I think we could learn a lot from how Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, how he was treated when he announced this press conference. And let me know if I got this straight, because he claimed as soon as he went out there that he was hacked. They tried everything they could to stop this from Periscope. I think Periscope got hacked. His Facebook page was hacked. They were unable to basically have this press conference go live. I mean, that says a lot. Who do you think was hacking WikiLeaks when they're trying to release all this information?
Well, suspect number one is the CIA. And they did interfere with the press conference. It was interrupted several times. Assange is very clever, though, in terms of his ability to use internet media, and he was able to fight back and keep the press conference going.
And he probably expected this to happen, because it's not the first time he's had to deal with this kind of stuff.
Sure. He anticipated it. And what Assange has revealed so far is that not only has the CIA gone rogue and developed this trove of malware that can be used to basically take control of your iPad and your television and your cell phone, but additionally they were using these techniques against American citizens. I mean, that's really the astounding part to me. There were 22,000 IP addresses that trace back to the United States, and Assange said he was sure some of those were targets of the investigation. And
targeted towards journalists and whistleblowers. And we've been called crazy for years here at InfoWars, and I'm sure you've heard the same thing when we tell people that, look, your cell phone is listening to you, your television could watch what you're doing, even your Xbox. And now it looks like through these releases from WikiLeaks, the CIA, like you said, is a rogue agency. And I tell you what, their surveillance system is basically rivals even that of the NSA.
Well, yes, it's also astounding that the CIA built internally a capability that rivaled the NSA's, and no one knew about it.
And no congressional oversight, and certainly the public had no idea. Most of the public.
Where'd they get the money to do it? Where did they divert it from? And here it's revealed by WikiLeaks, and you suddenly get aware that you've got a CIA that's out of control, and the fact that they let this trove of malware techniques become available. Assange said it was a devastating, a breach on the part of the CIA of their own security. I mean, it's mind-boggling that the CIA was this stupid not to protect those malware techniques that they developed. They got out. They had been circulated by U.S. intelligence. Assange got a hold of them, and now Assange is blasting them to the world. And it's just the beginning.
Yeah, and they're saying that now all this information could potentially end up in the wrong hands. Well, I'd say it was in the wrong hands to begin with, in the hands of the CIA. And you know what, folks, I just want to point out, and you could look for this on the internet, maybe you guys can find it. Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, he's seen in pictures where he covers up his webcam on his computers, and he covers up the microphone too. I wonder why he does that. Hey, let's talk about, because we only have a couple minutes, and I want to talk about Good Night Obama. This is a brand new book you have coming out, and we're going to show the trailer here in a couple minutes. Tell us about the book and where people can find it.
Well, it's on InfoWars. You can get it at InfoWars.
Oh, all right.
In bookstores around the country, and Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. It's a parody book. It's a cartoon book. I wrote it to say, like Good Night Moon, Good Night Obama, for all the disastrous things he brought to us. And if you show the trailer, you'll see the humor in it. It's, Good Night Obama for the birth certificate, for open borders, and all the other crises you've created.
All right, folks.
I decided to have a good time with it. Obama's leaving. Might as well say goodbye in fashion.
Absolutely. Yeah, good riddance, right? Well,
Right.
Dr. Jerome Corsi, it is so good to have you on our side. Thanks for being here. We're going to play that clip right now. And folks, you can go to goodnightobama.com or go to InfoWars store and check out Good Night Obama. Dr. Jerome Corsi, thanks for being here.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Good night, Obama. In the great Oval Room, there are many memories, leaving a leftist legacy binding America with charisma, forcing government-run healthcare upon the greatest nation, and websites crash on implementation. The evil ISIS, once called a JV team, and Hillary's classified emails printed by the Ream. Good night, Gitmo detainees, exchanged for AWOL crybabies. Crocodile tears over gun restrictions. And the IRS targeting conservatism. Good night, safety. Let's open the borders. Good night, Constitution, by executive order. Good night, brave men in uniform with half-hearted salute. Good night, Israel, whom we deeply offended. Farewell, betrayed voters, campaign promises rescinded. Good night, talk shows, celebrity whoring now done. And good night to all those clinging to their Bibles and their guns. Good night, birth certificate of unknown source. Good night, jobs without any remorse. Good night, Benghazi and the valiant lives there claimed. Good night, online video, the scapegoat to blame. Good night, Putin. Good night, Kim Jong-un. Good night, Rose Garden. Good night, wings east and west. Good night, rainbow victories. Good night, 10 trillion in new record-breaking debt. Good night, 8 years of fundamental change. Good night, voters, twice believing what I said. Hello, Hawaii, where I'll now rest my head. Good night, America. Good night, Obama.
Travel ban and Muslims, Putin, Kremlin, Korea, the bombs in Aleppo.